USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate, but have been wrong on occasion, so bear that in mind. For more information on the subject, please visit zetatalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. In October 2019, Brazil had mystery oil along its pristine North Coast beaches. The source was never determined, though the amount was astonishing. 600 tons of oil, the equivalent of almost 4,300 barrels. No ships hauling oil had capsized. Without an oil spill, where did this oil come from? Per the Zetas, this came from the oil-soaked rock in Venezuela, which was being released into the water during the South America roll to the west. Yes, Venezuela does have oil in its shale rock, and the currents apparently carried it down along the coast to Brazil. But where does oil come from? The theory that oil is the product of dinosaurs or forests under heat and pressure does not hold up. It cannot be proven in labs. For the Zetas, the oil deposits on Earth come from petrol compounds dropping to Earth during a passage of Nibiru. The Asteroid Belt was once where numerous water planets rode, life-bearing planets that were bashed to pieces during a passage of Nibiru. This drops to Earth during a passage and seeps into cracks in the ground, thus forming oil deposits, especially where wafting over volcanoes. But is there any proof of this theory? Lately, lots of proof. Quoting Zeta Talk, oil and gas form in the atmosphere under certain conditions where intense heat from exploding volcanoes and continuous lightning create the equivalent of petrochemicals from the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in the atmosphere. Those who doubt this statement may point to modern-day volcanic eruptions and lightning storms which give no evidence of such formations. But the modern-day environment is not equivalent to what is present during a pole shift, during the trauma that the Earth undergoes during the passage of her brother Nibiru. End of the quote. Mankind considers that oil is a non-renewable energy source because it cannot replicate the process. Quoting planetenergies.com, these hydrocarbons take millions of years to form under very specific pressure and temperature, with an estimated average sedimentation of 50 meters every million years. It takes 60 million years for dead animals to become liquid hydrocarbons. It is hardly surprising, therefore, that oil is classified as a non-renewable. Quoting Zeta Talk again, these petrochemicals are present in the tail of Planet X, having been gathered during the many passes through the asteroid belt in the past, from planets that were pelted to pieces by the moons in the tail of Planet X. Oil is formed as the tail passes over the heat of volcanoes, and was not formed by rotting vegetation or animals, as asserted by human scientists who are at a loss to explain oil formation. They cannot recreate oil formation in the lab, so the theory does not stand. Did the Zetas predict this current mass of petrols dropping down from the sky and starting fires? Yes and no. In 1995, when the Zeta Talk saga started, the Zetas explained that blankets of fire would drop from the skies during the end times cataclysms, as legend reports. They were not clear just when this might happen. Quoting 1995 Zeta Talk, "The cataclysms come with geological upheavals, volcanic eruptions, and some parts of the earth heating up to fiery temperatures, and in some cases firestorms from the sky. These firestorms are caused by reactions of atmospheric gases to the turmoil going down. Petrocarbons are in essence created due to flashes of lightning and intense heat to passage over open volcanoes. And these petrocarbons rain down a fire at times, with the atmosphere scattered. Chemicals in the comet's tail, similar to your petrochemicals, do not flash in a quick consummation into water and carbon dioxide, but descend close to the surface of the earth before bursting into flame. A firestorm killing all beneath. All this has been reported in ancient times as humans observed accompaniments to the cataclysms. This type of activity sets forests afire, where vegetation regrows from seeds and roots. Many areas will nevertheless be denuded of vegetation for some time." End of the quote. Then in March of 2019, two events thrust the Petrol Bubbles into the news. Alberto started capturing them in his photos, and the Lomonosov satellite captured them, exploding on the outer edge of the atmosphere when they had reached the oxygen that space lacks. This was 18 months ago. Amateur astronomers who have been taking photos of the Nibiru complex started capturing Petrol Bubbles. In October 2019, a Russian satellite high above the atmosphere captured a remarkable sight: firebombs exploding on the outer surface of the atmosphere. Quoting the Washington Pundit, Russian scientists say one of the satellites spotted high-powered light explosions while flying dozens of kilometers above the Earth. They say the mysterious phenomenon can't be explained by anything known to modern physics. Unusual space phenomena have been detected in the Earth's atmosphere before, but a team operating the Lomonosov satellite say these explosions are something entirely new. Now I have photos. They had photos from the satellite, and there they were, like bombs going on the outer surface of the atmosphere. Quoting Zeta Talk, the Lomonosov explosions are bright light because they touch the Earth's atmosphere where there is sufficient oxygen to burn the gaseous fuel. But farther out in space, this fuel is but a potential, a charged clump of the petrochemicals that are carried in the tail from having been garnered in the asteroid belt. These Lomonosov explosions appear as glowing orbs in Alberto's photos because he is filtering for light in the red spectrum. Where not yet set ablaze, they appear as dark chunks. Just as bolides are increasing, solid debris in the tail of Nibiru screaming to Earth, these Lomonosov explosions will increase, puzzling mankind. End of the quote. Now, Alberto uses mylar, and so this orange big bubbles, you could see them, and they overlap, and they just look like a fog of bubbles in front of the sun. And they didn't start appearing until 2019. Alberto was surprised. He said, "My head hurts. I don't know what this is." He's an old man in Italy and just a master at taking these photos. Proof was again provided in October 2019 when Chiloe, an island off the coast of Chile, had mysterious fire dropping from the sky. And yes, there was an active volcano nearby on the coast of Chile. Quoting RT, Chile's National Geography and Mining Service soon gathered scientists to investigate the strange, bright objects, dispatching teams to some 7 sites on Chiloe to take samples. The scientists concluded they found no remains, vestiges, or evidence of a meteor left behind. This was not a meteor, just like somebody had started a fire in some trash under a bush. Quoting vintage Zeta Talk, The theories on oil and gas formations could be put to the test daily during this modern day, but no such proof has ever been proffered or even sought. Petrochemicals that form in the sky, where they do fail to burn due to the lack of free oxygen, soak into the fractured ground and become trapped during the settling process that afterquakes provide for many years after a pole shift. In most cases, such petrochemicals formed in the atmosphere during pole shifts and seeped into the fractured ground, and they're broken down by the normal process of decay of organic matter. But the oil that humans find today was protected from this process by being sealed off from the air, creating a tomb where bacteria could not proceed unabated. End of the Zeta Talk quote. But the proof is literally falling on our heads these days in the form of petrol bubbles wafting about in the tail of Nibiru. For instance, as seen in satellite photos taken high above the atmosphere, these are not lens flares or light bent into rainbows or sundogs by ice crystals in the atmosphere. This is above the atmosphere. This photo was taken as part of a promotion selling coins that had taken a trip into space, as the spaceweather.com site proudly proclaimed on February 26th of this year. And I quote, "The U.S. Mint has just released a reverse-proof dollar coin honoring the Hubble Space Telescope. The students of Earth to Sky calculus took it one step further, flying a whole roll of Hubble coins to the edge of space." But this had not taken Zeta Talk fans by surprise, as these petrol bubbles had been appearing regularly for the past couple years. Lately they have become monstrously large, even blocking the light from the sun. On February 22nd of this year, amateur photographers were capturing petrol monsters that were moving in front of the left-hand side of the sun. On February 25th, this caused a split sun appearance in a photo from Sarasota, Florida. Part of the sun skewed to the upper left, the other half of the sun skewed to the lower right. Quoting the photographer, February 25th, 2001, from Sarasota, Florida, at around 5:41 p.m. Interesting capture today. The Zetas have mentioned more sky phenomenon on the way, the sun distorted from the massive petrol bubbles. You can see the prism effect due to the greasy elements from Nibiru and how hazed out the sun is from them. The bottom left corner of the sun looks to be blocked by one of the large petrol bubbles we have been getting in our pictures. Petrol bubbles look like it's getting closer to being in front of the sun, just like the Zetas mentioned, which at times might block out the sun. You can also see the iron oxide surrounding and mixed in as well. End of that quote. The Zetas confirmed, quoting that Zeta Talk, "These giant petrol masses will block the sun to some degree and be without any explanation other than the presence of Nibiru." And by February 27th, even the SOHO images were showing a darkened left side to the sun. This matched photos taken by amateurs, which showed a blob over that part of the sun, coming in from the left side. There appeared to be two blobs, too, that day, one from the left and the other from the right. No wonder sunlight had trouble getting through. Campers on the beach in California also saw drama on February 27th, what they viewed and captured on film they assumed was an eclipse. Suddenly the day became as dark as dusk, then returned to be as bright day again. But NASA's solar eclipse chart showed the next eclipse was not due until June 10th. Quoting the photographers, "Here in California, us Californians had an eclipse yesterday. The sun before the eclipse, then the sun during an eclipse. So freaking amazing." And they provided the before and after photos. Was it a religious experience? This might have been assumed by Father Giovanni Ferraro on February 22nd in Italy at the Sanctuary of the Virgin Mary of the Frasino. He filmed the sun at a reduced light intensity, and then it seemed to blossom into full light and throb. Quoting the tweet containing the video, "The sun of February 22, 2021, in Peschiera del Garda, the sanctuary of the Virgin Mary of the Frasino, on the 90th anniversary of Jesus' appearance in St. Faustina Kowalska." The video was taken by Father Giovanni Ferraro. End of the quote. The petrol bubbles have been increasing in number and size as Nibiru comes closer, wafting its tail back and forth in the region between the Earth and Nibiru. The petrol masses change position, moving about. They also capture light rays which curl around inside the petrol bubbles. Quoting Zeta talk on this matter, "Oil on a pavement will display a rainbow, so oil captures and bends light easily. Caught in an oil-heavy bubble, thus, light does not escape but goes around in circles, thus forming the ultra-bright specks within a single petrol bubble." End of the quote from the Zetas. But many smaller bubbles can clump together, forming a larger mass. Like an oil stain on the driveway, oil blobs will merge into one if they can't touch one another. Quoting Zeta talk again, "Petrol bubbles create their own light-bending phenomenon for several reasons. Oil catches and distorts light, thus the rainbows that form on oil spills. Large petrol bubble clumps turn the light beams round and round, so they appear to be a large mass." End of the quote. These can be seen on the horizon or dropping from the sky. Last December 2nd, they were filmed on the horizon from Florida, charging toward the beach. What must people think seeing something like this charge of the petrol monsters on the horizon? Of course, the Nibiru cover-up silenced the media. If these petrol masses drop to Earth, will they always catch a fire and burn? No, not unless there is a spark of some kind due to lightning or friction, and not if there is insufficient oxygen for a burn. In early March 3rd of this year, 2021, large droplets were captured on film in Denver. They gradually dissipated as they dropped. Quoting Zeta talk on this, "The objects seen recently over Denver and elsewhere are not UFOs or any of mankind's crafts. They do not seem to have a solid form at the tip of the dropping matter, and for a reason. They are dropping petrol masses, not set alight because there has been no friction or spark to set them alight. They are dissipating into the air around the mass, thus seeming to disappear. The petrol masses can ignite and burn, or burn slowly and release smoke, or fail to burn and simply dissipate. During the pole shift, when the oxygen in the atmosphere has been consumed, these petrol masses will drain into the cracks in the ground and form what mankind calls oil reserves underground." This past couple years, the petrol in Nibiru's tail have created light flashes in the sky when the wafting tail containing the petrol reaches the Earth's atmosphere, where there is oxygen to burn. At a distance in 2019, they appeared as dark smudges in the sky, but as Nibiru drew closer, the fact that they are bubbles becomes clear. By September 2020, they formed a grid seen naked eye, which in the opinion of the Zetas was caused by a phenomenon called surface tension, whereby oil droplets or water droplets will form a ball and resist merging with other droplets. They have been rapidly coming closer this past year. Quoting Zeta talk, "Oil droplets, as water droplets, have a surface tension that allows the bubble or droplet to hold its shape. Each bubble wants to retain its shape and not merge into larger bubbles. In space, these petrol bubbles in the tail of Nibiru will by preference spread out, keeping a regular distance from each other." End of the quote. Well, they got a lot of elbow room. They just say shove over, and therefore they tend to form a grid. And this has been seen more than once in front of the sun. Like, what's that? It's like there's a screen, So it's quite visible and totally puzzling because the media will not say the N-word. Of course, when these sudden petrol burns create flashes of light in the skies, not lightning nor an explosion nearby, they are ignored by the media. This occurred in Ohio in 2020, recorded by a garage cam. Petrol Skyglow is increasingly occurring and on occasion captured on film. Manifestations of Nibiru's greasy tail show up too, naked eye, as in a photo from California on September 30th, showing a smearing rainbow. Now in 2020, these petrol bubbles have become so thick they are blocking the view. We have dubbed them Lamanovsk bubbles as the Lamanovsk satellite captured images of them exploding on the outer edge of the atmosphere in 2019, when this petrol finally had access to oxygen so it could burn. Do these bubbles drop down through the atmosphere? Yes. Now a video capture from Brazil has captured a petrol burn from a dropping petrol bubble in the lower atmosphere. First smoke appears, then a flash of light, then dropping balls of light. Ground fires have started now because of these dropping and burning petrol masses. This was documented on March 16, 2021 in Peachland, Georgia, where a burning petrol mass was seen circling as it dropped, then fragmenting. Bolides, burning meteors, do not do that. Quoting Global News. A mysterious fireball caught on video floating through the night sky near Peachland sparked a blaze. Local resident J. Velikovsky said he was taking his garbage out when he noticed a bright object glowing in the sky. It seemed like it was kind of circling around, but then we saw it break up, and it started flying toward us. We saw the rest of it burn out, and then one piece basically fell down into the neighbor's yard. 4 fire trucks and approximately a dozen firefighters rushed to a report of a grass fire off Ponderosa Drive around 8:45 p.m. And yes, there is a video, and I have photos of it on my YouTube video, of what he saw in the sky and the result. Yo. Another recent phenomenon is a distorted sunrise or sunset. When the sun is on the horizon, sunlight must pass through the lower atmosphere to reach the eye of the viewer. On March 20th, 2021, from St. Joseph, Michigan, something distorted the setting sun when it was right on the horizon, creating a layered appearance. Very odd. And on March 22nd, a burning cloud momentarily appeared in Zambia. As long as oxygen is sufficient in the air, the petrol will likely flash into fire and be gone. This was featured on the Strange Sounds website, which has recently focused on Nibiru-related phenomenon. Good for them. Another new phenomenon captured by several amateur astronomers taking filtered photos of the Nibiru complex is the amount of iron oxide red dust trapped within the petrol masses. This showed up on dual photos on March 15th and March 19th. The trend to have sunlight blocked by these petrol masses will exacerbate if the red dust is thick within them. Quoting Zeta Talk, these dark petrol masses on display this day are filled with red iron oxide dust. One reason the petrol masses will be darkening the sun on occasion, even being taken for an eclipse of the sun, is this factor. When the red dust is free to blow about, each speck independent, they are not a sunblock. But when trapped inside a petrol mass, they become that. It is not just the predictions being made by the Zetas, as is the reports from the past that raise alarm bells. Velikovsky recorded what the West Coast Indians had experienced and what the Egyptians had experienced in the past during prior passages of Nibiru. Quoting excerpts from his book Worlds in Collision. Crude petroleum is composed of 2 elements, carbon and hydrogen. The inorganic theory of the origin of petroleum states that hydrogen and carbon were brought together in the rock formations of the Earth under great heat and pressure. The tails of comets are composed mainly of carbon and hydrogen gases. Lacking oxygen, they do not burn in flight, but the inflammable gases passing through an atmosphere containing oxygen will be set on fire, binding all the oxygen available at the moment. The descent of a sticky fluid which came earthward and blazed with heavy smoke is recalled in the oral and written traditions of the inhabitants of both hemispheres. Popoval, the sacred book of the Mayans, narrates, people were drowned in a sticky substance raining from the sky. And then there was a great din of fire above their heads. The entire population of the land was annihilated. A similar account is preserved in the annals of Cachuatitan. The age which ended in the rain of fire was called the Sun of Fire Rain. In Siberia, the Vogels carried down through the centuries and millennia this memory. God sent a sea of fire upon the earth. In the East Indies, the Aboriginal tribes relate that in the remote past, water of fire rained from the sky. With very few exceptions, all men died. The Egyptian papyrus Ipuwer describes the consuming fire. Gates, columns, and walls are consumed by fire. The sky is in confusion. The papyrus says that this fire almost exterminated mankind. End of the Velikovsky quote. How can the public protect themselves from these fire blankets? First, be at a distance from a volcano, as the incidents of blankets of fire always seem associated with petrol passing over a volcano. Second, pull a sod-covered board or piece of metal roofing over you as you lay in a shallow trench. Quoting from a Troubled Times advocate, there are several variations possible for a trench shelter. The key is to have a smooth metal roof that winds will pass over and to be at or below the surface of the earth. The key to survival, both for folks and the mechanical equipment one hopes will not shatter, is to not have to move more than a few feet. Think of falling in gravity. In the air, you fall 200 feet and die. If you only fall 2 feet, you don't normally die. If one doesn't have fall to roll or fall far, then the jolt comes, rolls along the ground over only 2 feet or so, then one only gets a bruise. Dig a wide trench, cover with a metal sheet for protection from firestorms and hail, and pull earth over that so that there is no edge the winds can pick up. End of that quote. Quoting from a Troubled Times list of steps to take in preparation for the coming passage of Nibiru. This lists digging a trench as step 1. Develop a plan. Research your location and plan your route to safety. Include a trench during the shift, temporary shelter and short-term supplies for the week of rotation stoppage and the months after. Garden with seed supplies, low maintenance, flocks and herds, and fishing and hunting as the area will support. Get into shortwave radio, expect to be on foot or boat when traveling, and keep your bearings. End of the quote. Let's say, like the hapless home in Peachland, burning petrol masses don't wait for the hour of the pole shift, but drop from the sky and burn your house up. Fire departments overwhelmed, insurance companies and construction companies overwhelmed. There you are in your basement. This might not be a bad thing. Cover the top of your basement with a tin roof and you are somewhat immune from the dropping fireballs. City water is usually piped into homes in the basement, at least in my village it is. The water mains run down the street and branch out to each home underground. So now you have shelter and water. Another alternative to those suddenly homeless because of Skyfire is a version of the Hobbit house covered with sod. Sod likewise is not particularly flammable, and the Hobbit house is well insulated from heat and cold. If you cannot find a tin roof for your basement, use wood but cover with sod. The early pioneers did this on their prairie homes. If your former, now crispy, wooden house had no basement, then consider erecting a temporary home out of fire-resistant material. Solid walls can be made from used tires, which often can be found laying around. This is in fact a current-day process used to create earth chips. Quoting Guyam, "Garbage warrior turns trash into green-built houses. Would you live in a house made of empty beer cans, old tires, and discarded soda bottles? Garbage like this is what renegade architect Michael Reynolds transforms into earth chips. There are mountains of tires around the world, and no one knows what to do with them. Go to the garbage dumps and harvest a mountain of appliances, refrigerators, washing machines, and dryers. Take the baked enamel covers and use the panels as scaled roofing to help capture the water. We are constantly finding new material that are being thrown away that can be built into houses." End of the quote. Firestorm will be occasional and not in every locale, and even at the hour of the pole shift, it will be those living near volcanoes that need fear a blanket of fire descending from the skies. Per legend, this was a West Coast Indian and Mediterranean near the massive volcano Thera in Greece. But erecting a greenhouse shelter, just a glass or metal rooftop for protection, would go a long way for protecting seedlings. Having a strong stock of seed also is good insurance. Even chickens out for their daily sunlight would have their run under glass or a metal tin. And I'm not suggesting that you have 4 walls and a roof, just the roof. Just something that would have a metal roof that they could dash under, or the seedlings could be under. Very doable. A little foresight, if you happen to get a fire from the sky, you'll be okay.